I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome once again. The Gamekeeper podcast here in the Gamekeeper studio in West Point, Mississippi, which is home of Rusty Mossy
Oak brand camo.
Yeah, when I look around the room, we got a little bit different layout today. Dudley, you're sitting there with a big grin on your face. Look like you enjoyed the weekend.
I did.
And then sitting in Lanny's chair, we've got Rusty McDaniel.
Nice. I get some music.
Is that an upgrade or a downgrade, Bobby?
Well, we'll see. It's yet to be determined. We still got a ways to go.
I've been waiting for my pinch hit opportunity, and it's here.
Here it is.
Hope I don't blow it.
We got Toxie at the far end. I think he's
Grumpy.
checking the Weather Channel.
Grumpy. No, not. And there's no reason to check the Weather Channel. It's been the same thing for 8 weeks in a row.
When is the next chance?
Thursday.
Maybe.
I
just don't. I hate to even bring it up.
Yeah. Hush.
Just call me Grumpy.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Grumpy. So then around the room, we got Max, who's going to fact check for us. Richie's running the board. Guys, we're going to have a great podcast today. We're going to be talking with a guy who is known for killing big, giant whitetails. And I mean, he does it and he's been doing it a long time. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce him so he can be a part of our discussion here. But Ben Rising from Ohio. You know, I mean, there ends up being a lot of good stuff come out of Ohio. And I'm going to say Ben's right up there at the top of it.
Ben is definitely at the top when you talk killing big deer.
Well, I appreciate that.
This ain't his first rodeo either.
Ben, when I look behind you, goodness gracious, what a wall of antlers.
Yeah, I've been truly blessed for sure.
Well, we've got a lot of questions we're going to ask you, but before we get too far down the road, Ben, there's just a couple things we need to do. Guys, we always talk about blood on the biologic. Dudley, you're looking. I know you hadn't even thought about that yet, but guys, we need y'all just, hashtag blood on the biologic. We especially like youngsters with their first deer. And I'm expecting we'll start seeing that coming up here pretty soon as rifle season starts coming in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But our friend Al Cheatham, I just got a text from him today. He's out west, killed a mule deer. It's his first mule deer. So he's all excited about that, I can tell you.
CJ Moore, he's a big listener to the podcast, big listener. He's always commenting on stuff, sending us photos. His son, Lucas, got his first deer, and it is a 10-point.
Wow. That's what I'm talking about.
That's exciting.
First deer, 243. Good shot, 10-point.
How about that?
That's tough to beat for a first deer.
Yeah, congrats, Lucas. We need to hit the horns on that.
Yeah.
So, guys, look, now the other thing we've got going, it started last week, but we've got a giveaway with Springfield Armory and our friends at Leopold. It's a model 2020 bolt action 22 rifle in honor of squirrel season.
Yes,
we had this podcast last week. So this rifle, we're going to give it away in 3 more weeks. Rusty's got it there in his hands.
It's as beautiful as 22 as I've ever seen.
He's even got his hearing protection on as he holds the rifle.
So
awesome gun.
That is a really good looking rifle.
It feels solid.
Oh, it is.
It feels like something that you would open your gun cabinet in 50 years and be proud to give to one of your grandkids. It's a timeless gun.
Absolutely.
So here's the deal, guys. If you'll go to, and Ben, we'd let you be, if you wanted to sign up for this, you'd have a chance to win this as well.
It's funny because I was listening to the Squirrel Hunter podcast you did the other day, and I was listening to you guys talk about that gun, and I was like, well, that sounds like something I'd like to get.
Oh, it's a beautiful
For
gun.
sure.
I'm telling you, it's nice. And it's got a Leopold scope on it. We all know
Yep.
that. So, guys, you can go to Mossy Oak Gamekeeper.com, and it's somewhere it'll say podcast giveaway, and then just follow Rob, you're nodding your head. They just follow all the little rules right there. And somebody, I think around mid-November, we're going to give this away, and somebody will be the proud owner of it.
Somebody's going to be pumped because that's a heck of a nice rifle.
It is. I tell you, the key to a great 22 is a great trigger. I mean, and they don't, I call it names, but they don't always have great triggers on them. That's a great trigger. Very, very crisp. No creep at all.
And
Snaps real
Check
easy.
it out yet, Doug?
oh yeah, I've already played with the trigger,
Mhm.
but I mentioned this last week, but it's Ruger 1022 mags.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when you get a new gun and it's got, the only magazine, it's got a specific magazine, and they can be hard to come by, but these are just about on every shelf at every gun store in the whole United States.
That's
right.
So
It's all
Never
squirrel
run out of
hunting
mags.
or do anything with that 22. Have an extra one in your pocket already full and snap it in there. And because invariably when you need it in a hurry, you're empty.
yeah,
That's right.
my favorite 22, I only have one magazine left, and you can't replace them.
Wow.
All right, guys, I got one last thing before we get started. And Ben, it's kind of, I was thinking about you when I thought about this, because I've read some stuff that you've posted about how much you enjoy your time afield. So I'm going to read a quote. And Ben, you're in this now. I want y'all to guess who said this, okay?
All right.
Are y'all ready?
You want me to answer it already?
No, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't. So, all right, go afield with a good attitude, with respect for the wildlife you hunt and for the forest and the fields in which you walk. Immerse yourself in the outdoor experience, and it will cleanse your soul and make you a better person. Anybody care to guess who said that?
I got 2 guesses.
We'll give you one.
I'd say Fred Bear.
Oh my goodness, right off the bat. There you go, yeah.
Hey yo,
I ran across
Heck yeah.
that the other day.
Bam.
That's just a great quote.
It is a great quote.
Yeah.
But you got to just slow down and read it again sometimes, especially when you're out there as opposed to stuck in here. But that is great. Not just words to read, words to live by.
Yeah, they are.
True that.
They are.
It's 100% true.
Ben, why don't you just start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started deer hunting and how you got so crazy about hunting these big bucks?
Well, I was, born and raised in Ohio with a full life. My daddy was a trapper and a predator hunter. He didn't hunt deer. One of his friends did, and I just got kind of used to seeing him, harvesting deer. Deer weren't a real big thing here. I just kind of really started to get a knack for it, and wanted to hunt them and learned a lot, on my own, just squirrel hunting, trapping, all that kind of stuff. Him taking the time to teach me animal habits and, how to set traps. And I was fortunate that I had people in my life that would give up their time to take me hunting. And, even when my dad couldn't, I had a friend, Bob Nuka. He introduced me to duck hunting when I was younger. Some guys would take me on deer drives when my dad was at work, and, just hunting in general. We just hunted everything to a degree, but I really just took to bow hunting as I started to age, my teenage years. And that's just really what I enjoyed the most. I always ran coon hounds, competition hunted them, things like that. So I've just always lived in the woods, besides farming and logging.
We hear a lot of guys talk about trapping. It teaches them the woodsmanship skills.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it.
That's a pretty common thread.
yeah, it seems like the people that are really good deer hunters didn't get their start deer hunting. They got their start
Right.
goofing in the woods.
Small game, whether it be squirrel, like you said, somebody took you starting out to the trap line or turkey hunting.
We never had a turkey season in Ohio until it was like 88 or something like that.
Yeah.
89.
Wow.
And that, man, teaches you to be a woodsman. Like, you might as well take everything you learned with squirrel hunting and everything else, and that just adds a whole new level to it with turkeys, especially pressured turkey, which I'm sure you guys know all about. But
Just a little.
man, that is just some severe woodsmanship when you're working birds and you hang with a gobbler all day long. That is almost as satisfying as shooting a booner.
For sure.
Well, I've never shot a booner, so I don't know, but it is very satisfying. But
You know what he has in common, though? My observation from listening to great people on the podcast, they all, if you call it the great ones, because he's definitely one of them, they all love everything about it. It's not just that 180 plus or whatever.
Yeah.
He loves that, but he loves everything about it. He loves practicing and scouting and planting and hanging in the tree stands and taking other people. And that's one thing that's great about him. I've known over the years of so many people he's put on great deer, unselfishly too. But it seems like the ones that are really good at it enjoy everything about it. The great doctor the other day was talking about, what's the worst thing that could happen if you get stuck in a bad stand? It's like you get to sit in a beautiful place in middle of nature and all of God's creations, for an afternoon. What's so bad about that? It's just they see the bigger picture. And I just think it makes them better at the whole deal when they're tuned into every little bit of it. Don't you think?
Oh, 100%. And I think too, for me, it is one of my greatest connections with my creator is when I'm hunting.
Bingo.
Like just sitting there, like I talk to God more at those phases than because like you're just so busy any other time of your life, it seems. And sometimes you don't always want to be, but it's just the way life is to a degree. But it's just really a great time that like reminds you just, I don't know, like how small we are and how great he is.
It gives me chill bumps listening to him.
Yeah.
It does.
What a great perspective. And
we get so wrapped up in our own little self and our own little world and stuff. And then when you're out there and all that, it's a freaking miracle all around you. Yeah, and open your eyes to it, just like he's telling us to. Get so much more out of it. And I bet you he spends more time too. We'll listen, but I bet you he'll say that too. The great ones, they spend a lot more time. They're a lot more patient than someone just after the deer, and that's all.
Enjoying the entire process, not just the outcome, is kind of what you're saying to me.
And as I've aged, I mean, obviously when I was younger, I think just like any young man or whatever, like you're kind of a little bit bloodthirsty at first, you know, and I mean, but as we age and you see perspective and you mature, you do see the forest for the trees, and you start to just enjoy every aspect of it, whether it's just like watching, Mr. Fox with the family and how they take him, and like we all wait for that time to watch that because it means so much to everybody. I killed my first deer sitting in the lap of at the time, I think Don would have been like around 80 some years old, maybe.
Wow.
He lived to be 102, I think. And he had one eye, and he was a great grouse hunter. But I killed my first deer sitting in his lap, just a little button buck, but like those times with people like that, times with my dad eating, a sandwich in the truck and drinking coffee on gun season, those are memories that you don't ever forget.
No, yeah, I agree. I think most of my memories are just small things. It's not necessarily the dead deer, the dead turkey. It's just little moments and things like that.
Little things that happen. I've told my boys and teaching them, you won't remember the kills as much as you will, the working hard to hang that stand or learning how to help plant the food plots. Or again, I mentioned process. That's what you'll remember more than actually, dragging that doe out or holding the antlers of that buck.
Everybody's right here, but the title of this, we wanted to talk to you about mature whitetails. So let's get off memory lane here and let's get over here. And we want to learn from you. It appears that you identify some mature bucks every year, and it looks like you just go after them. This Ranger is a great example. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and how that happened?
Well, he was a deer that last year was the first year I ever had any kind of knowledge about the deer or anything. Got access to hunt that place, and honestly thought the deer was bigger and older than what he was. I had lots of pictures of him, but then when I finally encountered him, I could just tell, I was like, this deer is not what I think. Like he truly needs a year, and it's really hard to lay off a deer like that because the neighbors were hunting him. He was on a 100-some acre piece, not very big. And the property is only 400 yards wide, and it's kind of long and really hard to access. But I took my chances, and I just kind of felt like I'd hunted him enough. I felt like I wasn't supposed to kill him because I didn't kill him. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant but I typically kill, like if I'm after a big, I typically kill him within 4 sits, 4 to 5. Sometimes I hunt some harder, but typically kill them first to third, fourth, fifth sit, and I hunted him. I sat 12 times for that deer and saw him once.
So Ben, I think you ought to point out you're not going after these deer at every opportunity. You're waiting on everything, the stars and moon and the wind and all that to line up for you, aren't you?
Most of the time. I mean, I kind of like wait for the deer to somewhat tell me what they're doing, or like I try to wait for, just like with Ranger, this cold front that came in early October. Those are just magical times, and then doesn't have to be the moon lining up with that either to make those times work, but it does help. And knowing where they kind of like to bed. It's being close to those deer, really, like those mature deer. Being in their roundhouse is really important this time of year to catch them in daylight.
So Ben, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to turn it over to these guys, but you mentioned being in their roundhouse. How do you know for sure I'm in his roundhouse?
Obviously, it's like information you gather from whether you're running trail cameras or just scouting or sightings or just in general knowledge of how mature deer use properties. You just try to somewhat make the best educated guesses, but a lot of boots on the ground in the off season. I did a lot of homework this year after season was out. Never did find his sheds, but I learned a lot about the contour of the property I was hunting and how he was using it. And I started to put that together. And when he finally started to show back up this year a little bit, he wasn't like on my cameras like crazy at all. I mean, it was just little sprinkles here and there, which is what a really big deer will do, these times of year. Like, their core is so small, like they're only moving so far from one area to another. They just don't move a lot. And I finally figured out somewhat what he was doing, and I just got tight. I mean, I seen him one afternoon. I'm not kidding you. I played a hunch, got in the stand at like 10-3, was wiping down because I was so hot. And I decided to turn and look into the CRP field, and there he stood, 10-4, 3.5 hours left of daylight, and he was taking a dump. So I knew he just stood up. And that was his downfall. Then I knew, I was like, okay, I have definitely found where he is at. And I killed him 2 nights later.
Your daughter's been begging you to hunt since her little brother shot the big 8 last year. You've ran a fire, dissed the fields, got stuck, got unstuck. Planted food plots, fertilized, and prayed for rain. You moved trees, limbed roads, even bought one of those fancy cell cameras.
So what's your excuse?
LS Tractor.
Moultrie has pioneered the game management category. Today, Moultrie is one of the best-selling brands of feeders and seeders in the world, and they continue to innovate with new technology that gamekeepers will rely on. Moultrie products are always field-tested and designed for hunters by hunters, combining forward-thinking innovation with time-tested practicality. Moultrie, first in feeders since 1979. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount.
The question I would have for you is, so once you knew literally where he liked to lay down, did you kill him going to food, or was it a mock scrape situation, pre-rut deal? How did you know?
Yeah, so I actually killed him 2 days later, him doing the opposite thing because the wind was different. So he was going to use where he was kind of bedding on the edge of these CRP fields and using the oaks and different things on the neighbors. I kind of knew, I just had a hunch that he was going to do exactly the opposite. And he moved later the night I killed him, but he was coming to work a little bit of clover, look for does, and hit scrapes. I killed him in a mock scrape I made.
That's cool. How many of y'all ever put out a mock scrape down here in the South?
I never have.
No, but I have like to get photos, but you hear more and more of folks using these mock scrapes, whether they're using a piece of rope or just putting another tree in a field, or there's already a tree in a good spot. But they obviously work.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah, they do. They don't always deer don't just go running to them like some people tend to think that we try to make it sound. But you have to put them. It's kind of like fish and structure. Like you have to put them where the deer want to be. And big bucks have certain attitudes and certain times of the year, and like they just want to let everybody know who they are. And this time of year, they're starting to get to that point to where like they're making rounds, pushing off their competitors a little bit out of their core. And that night it was kind of cool. It was high pressure. And I just figured like he's going to show up there just showing his dominance a little bit, just nosing around, and that's exactly what he did. Like there was a little buck working the scrape right below me, and that little buck literally took out of there like somebody spanked him because he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then I grunted to that deer twice, and he just come flying to that scrape to work it, and I shot him right in the scrape.
that is
crazy.
incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Dudley, have you got a question?
Well, I mean, we've got a ton of questions from listeners here. And I'm an oak nerd, so that's the question I gravitated to. But Esh Brother Outdoors wanted to know what your strategy is when you have like a bumper crop of acorns, when there's just food everywhere. Can you think back to, when you scored on a big buck in a year when there was just food everywhere?
This case was that exactly. There was red oaks everywhere. Red oaks and black oaks were hitting. Very few white oaks were hitting. But it was raining red oak. And anywhere they went into the timber, they could find that. And so it was more or less at this point, I had to narrow down where he bedded. That's what I had to know. And they will still use green that time of year. So there was just the smallest little clover plot tucked in the edge of the CRP, close to bedding areas, oaks, everything. Like I laid it out there just for that reason, not knowing that he would take to it like he did, hoping, and it actually worked.
That's tough. You just, it seems like, when you go a little further north, there's more open ground. It seems to me like it's a little bit easier to know where those target bucks are. But it's tough when there's a lot of food. I guess you just have to figure out where they're crossing. Like you said, you had that mock scrape, you had that little clover plot.
You mentioned you felt like he was going to do the opposite of what he did the day you saw. Why is that? I mean, why wouldn't you go, he's going to do it again? Just experience or intuition?
The wind, he was bedded on one side of that area, I think, because the wind was the one way the night that I first saw him. It had switched, so I figured he was going to be laying on the other side. And, using the other side of the property, using the neighbor's oaks. And I'd got a picture of him like 650 yards away that morning, headed north, which, mind you, I've never had a picture of him where I killed him. I saw him there, killed him there, had a camera there, and he was never in front of that camera. So I wasn't hunting there because I had pictures of him, because I can honestly say I didn't. Like not using that scrape, nothing, no pictures of him there whatsoever. His court was that small.
Just intuition.
Yeah, I had a question. Do sometimes you pick spots like that because they're safer? In other words, you could get in and out of it and have a good shot at him, but, maybe you felt like another spot had a higher percentage chance, but you had a higher percentage to bust him. And I know you well enough to know the last thing you want to do is let one bust you that time of year at all.
And that's 100% it. So like an old logging road ended where it topped right up into this field, gave me access through a lot of deer, but quiet access.
Yeah.
Cedar thicket and everything. But I was able to get up top to keep my wind consistent. And that's where the CRP grass was and the goldenrod field. That's what those big bucks love. And I figured the night that I had the hunch, I was like, he's got to be up here using this somewhere. I'm just not getting him on camera. And what he was doing was literally staying to the edge of that clover and walking that edge. It was like 60 yards out. He was about another 40 yards from my camera. So I figured I was kind of doing two things that night. I was hunting, but I was also observing.
Well, yeah. So Ben, are you running a lot? How many cameras are you running?
Well, I mean, I run a lot, but it's because I have a lot of different areas that I'm trying to hunt as far as state wise. Like this year, I've drawn a lot of tags. And so I've kind of got cameras scattered all over, but it's more or less just trying to give me ideas of what kind of deer in the area that, that I'm hunting. Like this deer particular, I was definitely trying to get pictures of this deer for sure. And I had some, just enough to tell me he was back using this property that I was able to hunt.
When you're trying to determine where this deer's bedding, would you put a lot of cameras on trails trying to figure out where they're coming from, and then as you start learning, moving them back further and further into a bedding area?
I honestly only had like 4 cameras on this 120 acres that I really felt like I was going to pick him up. And I was only picking him up 2. And so instead of going in there and doing a lot of walking around and bumping him around, plus, you got to remember he's 8 hours from where I live. He's in Illinois. I'm in Ohio. So I wasn't like making special trips. I did my prep and I just relied on what I knew from the year before, and no intrusion is the best that you can do for these kind of deer. And that's even in public land. Like those deer in public will find those spots where people are not going and they will be there.
Mac, you look like you got a question.
I'm curious, was it a perennial or annual clover that he was using?
This would be a perennial. I mean, it was the first year for it, but he was using, so we made the plot originally a little larger than I felt like I needed to. So then when it was time to maintain it, we only mowed part of it and was letting the other part grow up with weeds. And that was the part he was feeding in.
Felt more comfortable.
Well,
Yep.
we've talked about that a lot. Yeah, they
Yes.
feel comfortable, but when it is really dry, a lot of those weeds are what they want to eat.
Well, I mean,
Especially if there's not any clover there because it hadn't rained.
Dr. Harper he's been on twice talking about parking the bush hog and how it can be beneficial.
Yeah,
For sure.
One thing that I do, and like I did here on this farm, so we burnt the grass this spring on it. It's like 9-acre field of just goldenrod, all kinds of. And I did not mow the fire breaks on the edges like had been over the years. People that had owned it had always mowed the edges, for a fire break. I let them grow up this summer to be that nice soft grass, not the stiff goldenrod, things like that. That is where all the deer were on those edges. And I do that a lot in Ohio. Now I'll mow it again this year before spring. I'll go in and mow those fire breaks, in case we want to burn. We probably won't burn it again, but this year. But I'll mow it again just to keep that soft grass there again.
That's an interesting strategy. Like if you've got these fire breaks that, we were burning a few weeks ago, but if it's not thick, right there on the edge, you're encouraging yourself and a bunch of your buddies to ride their bikes around the field, checking cameras. And, so if you let your roads grow up a little bit, deer are going to feel safer walking down them. We've done that at my farm. Like, for example, a saddle on a logging road. We will purposefully not mow that one year to encourage deer to cross it where it is thick, or on a pipeline or something. You may mow a lot of it, but if you can leave some areas unmowed, deer may be more willing to cross right there. And that could be a big help if you're a bow hunter.
I do it a lot too, because a lot of times if you have a lot of mowed trails on farms, and this goes back to my trapping days, all the predators want to run those. And, you're kind of like, if you have a bunch of mowed trails leading to your food plot, you're just leading yourself up to a bombed night. You go in on an evening, perfect, plot's filling up or whatever, and then all of a sudden here comes 2 coyotes bumping into the plot. Well, guess what? There goes the deer, And so like, I've just learned certain little things and try to do, especially because I've never owned land in the last, few years, and to where I've been able to just do what I wanted to do with it. And I've seen things over the years and just kept like this memory bank. and I've been finally able to like imply some of it.
So, Ben, I wanted to ask you. You were talking about this soft grass. Do you know what kind of grass that was, or Dudley? Has anybody got an idea that?
You know, foxtail and stuff like that grows naturally. Like, it's nothing we planted. It's just Mother Nature's green grass.
Doing the fire lane at a different time of year instead of just right before deer season. Right. There's a different type of cover there, and they like stuff that varies.
So, like, say you got a field. Here's another one. Say you got like a great growed up field that has maybe some trees in it or some, you know, olive bushes or something that creates structure out in that field, or some saplings. Like, if you go out to that area in March or say even like, I don't know, June, May, say more like May, and you mow around those things and then never mow them again all summer, those deer will flock to those spots like men in bed around that structure.
Yeah. In my experience, a lot of that usually comes back in grasses and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, Ben, if a guy asks you, hey, look, tell me some secrets for hunting these older, mature deer that you seem to be so good at. Let's go down that road of just making sure we flip over some stones and explain some of that stuff.
You got to find one.
Yeah.
Can't kill it if you don't have it.
That's my saying.
And I will go, like, I put more time into finding one than and that's what people don't understand. And like, I don't play baseball. I don't play softball. I don't golf. I don't really fish. You know, it's kind of maybe a hindrance to a degree because I don't do a lot of other stuff in my free time. You know, when I'm not with family and I'm not working and doing that kind of stuff, my brain is on those big mature deer, because that's the challenge that drives me now. I've killed a lot of deer in my life, and it's not just about the killing now. It's like, for me, with Ranger, the hunt was over like the second I saw him do what I wanted him to do. And I figured him out. I was like, I got you. You know, like, that is the win for me. The harvesting and sitting behind him is cool, but it's really not what drives me. I don't know how to say it. Like, it could be a 150-inch 8-year-old deer in Kansas. If he's hard and I can figure him out, to me, I love that.
Well, what you just said, the figure him out part, that's more than half the battle there. I mean, obviously,
sure.
then you got to execute when he does get in front of you, but the win is figuring one out.
Well, and then, you know, when the hunt happened and you saw him on that first hunt, if I saw a deer of that caliber on my first hunt and it got away, I would feel really defeated. And it almost sounds like you just got more excited. And you know, you were using that as a tool to narrow it down.
I mean, again, going back even maybe 10 years ago, I might have walked out of there kicked off. You know what I mean? But I literally was standing there and I was like watching him and I'm like, you sucker. I can't believe you're actually doing that. And I kind of smiled with I had my shirt off, my bow's at the bottom of the tree. So I grabbed my cell phone and just film him for a little bit. And I was like, well, maybe I should get my bow. But I could tell by watching him that he wasn't going to do what I wanted anyway. So I wasn't trying to like just booger him. And I went to get my bow rope anyways. I thought, well, I better pull it up. And he heard me hit the seat. And he just kind of looked. He knew it wasn't right. He just hunkered down and skipped out of the plot and went into the weeds again. And so I was like, well, all right. So I just got down, honestly, because I knew he wasn't coming back. And I was like, I don't want to, no sense in hearing other deer and all that. So I just was walking out and I was like, well, God's got a plan. Like, I just got to figure out what's going on here and, you know, watch and just go back and analyze again. You know, it was something new I learned and put it all together. And sometimes I do things I can't even explain. Some people, like, I don't know why I do something.
That's the cerebral hunter.
Yeah. So the next thing on your list would be, so you identify a big deer. What's the next most important thing? Is it access or scent, or is it 2A, 2B, or what? What's the next thing on your mind?
Obviously, getting access to where a deer lives like that, or in the neighborhood at least. Figuring out what kind of deer he is. Every deer has different personalities. Some are walkers. Some are very reclusive. Some don't like other deer. Some are dominant, some are submissive. Every deer has a weakness. You just have to figure what that weakness is sometimes.
I've never heard it put like that.
Yeah,
Every big deer has a weakness. You got to figure it out.
And that sounds much easier to say than to actually do, I would
Absolutely.
imagine.
I don't know. Like, it's just one of them things that some people are super good at killing turkeys and can just work a call, like, you know, and they just know what turkeys are going to do all the time. Or I'm a great turkey hunter, but I'm a better deer hunter. It's my passion, I think. You know, like Mark Drury will pick a turkey over a deer any day. He'll tell you that.
Yeah, we enjoy having Mark around,
Yeah.
and just for that reason. So, and boy, he can run a turkey call like nobody's business.
No, it's sick.
Fact.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, it's sickening.
So
You don't even want to pull yours out.
no, you don't.
So Ben, like, how often, like, comparatively, are you hunting like land that you're allowed to do habitat manipulations on, and like public ground? And how do you attack that differently?
The last 4 years, I pretty much have hunted mostly ground that I've either leased or that I own now, or that I have, like, I'd say maybe permission with a couple other guys. But before that, all the big deer I was killing was, leases or knocking on doors, or some was even public. I just wasn't making it known. Like, I was trying to keep it quiet, not talk about that I'm a great public land hunter, if that makes
Right.
sense. Because I didn't want attention on that.
Right. That's understandable for sure.
I mean, I literally would have my wife drop me off places, and she would pick me up. You talk about a trooper, she would drop me off, come back after dark, pick me up. It got that intense sometimes because once people found out where I was hunting, it would pretty much be over.
Yeah, it's different. The public land approach for whitetails versus turkey is different. Everybody can hear the turkey gobble, but if the word gets out just from that there's a big deer in the area, there's going to be plenty.
I
of
know
folks,
that guy, and he's parked
there.
at this particular gate every other afternoon.
Got to be a reason for
I
that.
might need to go check that out.
Yeah.
So, Ben, in my notes trying to prepare for this, I was told that you actually killed a deer, and later on it made you have to move from the area. Can you? I may not be phrasing that right, but can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, my very first really big deer that I ever killed years ago, when I was filming for Drury's, it just caused so much jealousy that. And when I was hunting, everywhere I would hunt, it just became treacherous. You know what I mean? Like, literally, somebody was always trying to mess with you. I was still young, raising a family, didn't have a lot of money. I was logging every day, trying to run a logging business. Just didn't have dirt, places I had permission on, but other people did too. And, I just didn't want to deal with it. And the headaches, and I didn't know how to deal with it at that point either. I wasn't, didn't look at life the same way as I do now, and let it get to me. And I probably shouldn't have the way I did, but, I felt like we had an opportunity to move about 2 hours away, and it was a better opportunity for me and my family. And I felt like I made the right call. And so that's what we did.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about recently, Jason Hart came and hunted with you,
Yep.
and it looks like you guys had a great time. He killed a nice deer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's a piece that, it's same situation. A lot of grass, timber, a lot of growed up weedy fields on this place, no crops. Basically a buck farm. It's got does on it, some junky hay. It's not a great farming farm because the ground is so full of flint and tough that nobody can really farm it, but it holds deer. It's just one of them places that it's always been able to have success at killing mature deer there. It's just been a great producer. We just do a little bit of mowing some of the paths, do some of the right stuff over the deer bedding and where they're feeding, and kind of set up for it and wait. And that was the first sit. in that farm.
Yeah, they traveled up that day, got in the stand, and got an air in that deer. It just goes to show you the homework and what this guy right here knows about them. But
yeah, and my buddy Mark was helping me with that one too, so I can't take all the credit. But
do you remember what you asked me when we talked on the phone? We were sort of lining it all up. I said, "Yeah, Jason Hart, from the company is going to come up and bow hunt." And said, "Jason Hart, isn't he a turkey hunter? Is he a deer hunter?" I said, "Well, yeah, he's a heck of a turkey hunter, but I'm pretty sure he knows his way around the deer woods too." Yeah. And sure enough, he 10-ringed him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He put a good shot on him.
It seemed like so many times these big deer get killed by the first time you go in there to sit on them.
Yes, absolutely.
But you mentioned that earlier, didn't you? The top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Don't you think it's? I mean, for most people, it's so hard to get in where you need to be and get out more than a time or two. They just, I mean, they're so sensitive to every teeny thing. I mean, Buddy, you may know how many times more sensitive is their nose than ours? Like 10,000 times,
a lot.
Some crazy number.
Yeah.
I mean, so how do you beat that? So yeah, I mean, just in my rookie days, I would remember the best hunts I ever had around what I thought was a good deer at the time. We didn't have cameras. Would always be the very first time I went somewhere and used a climber and climbed. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's in here? And then I'd never see them again.
Right. And I think that's important. Yeah. And he would probably say the same thing. Like, if you've got a spot that's 60 acres or you got a spot that's 130 acres that you're splitting with a buddy or something like that, you might want to look into if you want to scratch the itch, go find some public or go knock on a door.
Yes.
Go, we were asking Ben earlier, what are you hunting this afternoon? And he said, no, cause I don't have one picked out that's doing what I need it to do right now. And so
one thing,
I think you have to find out what your goals are. Do you want to hunt and sit in the woods a lot, or do you want to hunt a trophy animal? And if you want to do both, you may need to find a couple of backup places to go.
Yep.
What occurred to me though is every person we've talked to now, including obviously him, put him right up the top of Mark, is they have the same thing in common. So it's like 100% about people that are great at killing mature deers. They do not, and it doesn't matter if you're competing with buddies in a club, in a spot, they do not go hunt a spot unless conditions are just right. They just do not do it under any circumstances. Mm-hmm. Even if it's iffy. And you listen to Dr. Chamberlain, you listen to Mark. Mark. I mean, Mark's you're meticulous. I mean, he is anal about details. I mean, just over the top. I mean, I can remember him waiting that deer about 5 or 6 years ago. It was so big. And he said, I literally waited 40 days into the season before it was finally right. And then I went in there. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing for everybody to listen out there to learn is just don't do it. Even if you're in a club and you're worried about beating somewhere to it or public land, do not hunt a stand when you know the conditions are wrong. Ever.
And you're messing it up for yourself, and you're messing it up for everybody that's going in behind you.
Yeah, and I'm preaching to myself because I have to catch myself. I mean, I think by now, I don't do it much, but I see so many people I hunt with, and even me, they're just a little sloppy about that. People like him are not, ever.
Mac, I think you were looking up how a deer's nose. What did you come up with?
Yeah, so Mississippi State has it at 500 to 1,000 times stronger sense of smell than humans.
Okay, that's only okay. So I missed it a few thousand.
Ben, do you believe that?
Oh yeah, I know it.
Oh, I would have thought it would have been more.
Wow. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's just
unbelievable. It was more.
Yeah, I really thought it was like tens of thousands times better than ours, to be truthful. And it's just like what Toxie was saying earlier. You cannot enter their domain and them not know you've not been there. You just cannot do it. I don't care if it's 3 days later, they can smell where you've been.
Yeah.
And they don't always get alarmed by it at times, but they know. And if you're in the wrong spots, then that alarms them. But like I've always said, there's secondary zones and primary zones. Secondary zones are those fields where they're used to seeing tractors, maybe the farmer banging a gate, a car going down a road a couple 100 yards away. things like that, like trails or, gravel roads, places that they're somewhat like, they know when they're going to those areas, things are going to be different. But when they're in their core spot and like there shouldn't be any intrusion, those are the no places that you should not be like treading foot if you don't have to.
That's good intel right there.
Yes, it is.
You've heard the stories about, like the public land guys and going way back in, areas that aren't messed with and this and that. A lot of times they have success, but then you've got the spots that guys go in and out of all the time. And then you often hear, well, so-and-so killed a big one within 75 yards of the parking lot in that little thicket by the highway.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar? I mean, do they just have a knack to find those little spots off that we overlook as hunters? And then will they just sit tight too? Like they don't blow out like does and little bucks. If you walk right, they'll just sit there and watch you walk by and smell you and just stay in the cover, won't they?
Most of the time, like those bigger deer, like anymore, like on some places, I am not quiet about going into hang stands or to do things like I used to do. Now, if I'm trying to like slip right in on one, like I moved a stand for Ranger and I was very quiet. Slipped up on a windy day, it was raining. I moved a stand and I was trying to be quiet because I didn't want to bump him that night. But like preseason or like maybe I'm not going to hunt it for a week, I feel like you're better off to make noise, let those deer know you're around, and they'll just kind of sit tight because they just want to know where you are. It's that little tink of metal or that stick cracking or that freaks them out because they don't know where you're at.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes like they think something's after them.
Right.
When it's, you're in stealth mode,
Yeah.
they feel pursued. And then if you're being sloppy or whatever, I can't tell you how many deer I've seen on a dozer or a tractor that just sat there and watched me. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Or people that have worked on stuff telling me about, did you see this deer or that deer? And it's crazy how they know the difference.
Yeah. Like we'll be cutting timber, dropping trees in the summertime, and you'll look over 50 yards away and there's deer eating leaves off the tops.
Yep.
And you got skidders running, chainsaws running.
Yep.
They just know.
Yeah. Just the other day, I was in working on a hunting house, kids hunt out of, saw, drills, patching on it, making some, just working. And then 30 minutes later, on a cell camera, on a white oak tree, 50 yards down the edge, 5 or 6 does just walk right out. Didn't care. They're out there eating acorns after we'd been sawing, talking, hammering, drilling, and carrying on.
It's like they knew you were there, but they knew left.
We weren't hunting them. Yeah.
I do the same. Like when I'm walking my woods shed hunting, I literally talk to the deer. Like it sounds dumb, but I literally, when I come into the woods, those times of years that I'm not hunting, I will literally say, "Hey girls, I'm here. Just walking out the ridge, whatever." And you'll see them bump around and they stop. You can watch them from one ridge to the next. They just really want to know where you are.
Right. You're proving to them that you're not being sneaky.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to explain it.
So Ben, how does the food plots figure into what you do in managing a farm, and how do you use them to your advantage?
Well, they definitely do. We leave some crops, and we love to tuck in little green plots or little brassica plots, stuff like that, spots. But I'm really big about trying to put those in places that are really close to where deer are, and I don't hunt them a lot. They're just smaller little things. I don't use them like some people do because I'm real big about not trying to draw a ton of deer to my farm or my lease or whatever. I want the right deer. I think by sometimes giving them too much food, you're drawing too many deer, and those really big deer don't like all that social pressure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought process, because if you watch a lot of deer in the field, there's a lot of stress going on. I mean, some deer don't like being around other deer, and if you watch it, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Early season, that tactic is really well. Now, as the rut comes, and bucks are looking for does, obviously, if you have quite a few girls on your farm, they're going to be there, so there's like areas to have those spots. But I think those bucks need to have a lot of those areas too that they just don't get messed with, or the other deer don't want to be, or they got a small little plot that they kind of like to take to, or something like that. And water is a huge factor, especially like a year like what you're dealing with right now.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Ben, I'm trying to get inside your mind a little bit and understand what motivates you. But so now, are you looking for like a 6 or a 7 or 8-year-old deer? Are you looking at age? Or are you looking at antler size and inches, or what motivates you? What is it?
Where I can hunt like Ohio and Illinois, where I can spend more time. Obviously, I'm trying to find a bigger rack deer, but it still has to be 5+. Years old. I'm not going to shoot one under 5.
What about Jason's buck? We mentioned Jason Hart's buck earlier from October. What was that deer's habits and his age, and what was he? I mean, he was a pretty big one, wasn't he? Talk about that deer a little bit.
I mean, he killed that deer, was bedded within, I would say, 100 yards of where Jason killed him, 125 yards. He was using a thicket across this little field. He would feed into this weedy clover field, come across and head to the white oaks that were behind his stand up on the other hill.
Weedy clover field again.
Mm-hmm.
Another mention of that. Like you said, having it grown up.
Yeah.
And it was secluded. It was a secluded field that couldn't be seen.
How many different states are you typically hunting?
Well, I always hunt Illinois, Ohio. This year and Kentucky sometimes, but this year, and now Missouri, but I drew Kansas and Iowa this year for bow tags, so that's exciting.
That is.
Now that I own dirt in Illinois, I can kill 2 bucks with a bow in Illinois.
Do you almost wish you hadn't drawn Iowa and Kansas in the same year? You're gonna have a hard time fitting it all in, huh?
No, I'll find time.
Oh yeah, yeah. When you got that many bucks on the wall like that behind you, you'll find time.
Yeah, you gotta get your priorities right.
That's it, man.
Bingo.
Well, Ben, what should we be asking you if you're used to being you're talking about hunting big bucks? Or is there something we should be asking?
One thing I just tell everybody is hunt smarter, not harder. Like seriously, if you've got one located or you can find one, and I mean, there's times like, and I do have places that I'll just hunt because I just want to hunt. You know what I mean? Like I want to get out and enjoy Mother Nature. I love the smell of fall, and I do want to shoot a doe or something like that, but I don't want to mess up maybe the buck that I'm trying to hunt. So I'll hunt different spots, or I'll take somebody, because it's really enjoyable to see somebody kill a good deer, to watch Jason, his reaction
I bet.
with that deer, that was awesome, and because that dude's jolly, like old St. Nick as it is. And so,
yep.
When he killed that deer, it was pretty cool.
Old Mighty Joe was excited too, I believe. He's filmed about 10,000 of them over the years, and he got just as pumped. He got just as pumped on that one as he has
How about that?
any of them.
How about that?
Yeah, that says a lot about Joe too.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have poaching problems? The guys try to. How do you deal with some of those issues?
We've had some in the past, in areas, but I probably deal with it more than I realize, but I just don't catch anybody or don't know that it's going on sometimes, and sometimes you can literally drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Like years ago, I used to literally drive around during gun season all the time, controlling everything. And I just got to the point, I'm like, what am I doing? This is creating anxiety and stress that I just don't need.
Don't you think that cameras have kind of helped that situation a bunch?
Yeah, they definitely have. But I also feel like, too, we can take the use of cameras sometimes too far, and it kind of takes that element out of the chase to a degree. I'm starting to use them a little more just to kind of know what kind of deer are in the area. And I'm starting to back off some on sprinkling them everywhere.
Yeah.
At first, when they first come out, I was addicted to these cell cams. And I have plenty. Do not get me wrong.
I bet you do.
Because all the places that I'm hunting. But I just kind of like to know what deer are around. It's like Toxic said years ago. We'd go into a spot and just hunt it. And if a good deer walked by, you killed it. And then, for all you know, 20 minutes later, a deer that was 30 inches bigger might have walked by if you were really looking for a trophy buck, but you didn't know he was there. So I kind of try to use it more for inventory. I like to put them on scrapes to know what mature bucks are using what. But for a while, I was just like sprinkling those things on every trail, everywhere. And I still do to a degree, but nothing like I used to. I kind of scatter them out a little more.
Well, also, what I was kind of pointing out to about your anxiety, though, I think a lot of guys might be thinking, well, I bet, I better not cross this line right here because he's probably got some cameras over there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You just,
Oh, that I actually set up cameras just for people sometimes. Literally.
Yep.
You do get that problem.
It's a shame you got to do that, but
yeah.
good tool, I guess.
Big deer make people do crazy things.
Nosler ballistic tip ammunition is made for knocking down deer right where they stand. Nosler's ballistic tip bullet is the key. It has the controlled expansion and bone-crushing punch to turn a whitetail's lights out. Bring home more deer this year with ballistic tip ammunition. Buy now at nosler.com.
The Furminator is the industry's most versatile piece of food plot equipment, allowing plotters to do every step of the process, working the soil, adding seed and soil supplements, and compacting, from start to finish with a single implement. It's hassle-free by design. Set it for the seed size and simply drive the tractor, and the Furminator does the rest. Check it out at thefurminator.com.
I know you're a logger. Has there been anything you've learned over the years as a logger who's also a big deer hunter? Any tips or tricks you can offer our listeners that are private landowners that have some timber? Can you think of anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously logging is a great tool if it's done right to enhance your property, manage your trees. One misconception I've learned over the years with timber that people seem to think you always have to have thick to hold big deer. And I've learned that sometimes these bigger bucks actually like open timber more than we believe, especially in hill country, because they can see so far. And they can get away, they can just drop over a ridge and they're out of sight. Sometimes the property can get so thick that the deer don't even like it. I don't know if you've encountered that, but I have, because we have a real bad problem with like greenbrier and stuff up here. And man, the briars get so thick, and the olive, and a big deer with a rack can't even get through it. Like, his safety is actually hindered by the thickness.
Yeah. Entirely. And I think pressure has a lot to do with it. If there's a ton of pressure, then they're probably going to be going to thicker stuff. But if you're the only guy around that has timber, especially in the Midwest, where there's just a lot of fields and ag and timber can be limited, just having timber up there may be like having a little cutover here in the South.
And, again, like certain areas in the Midwest actually, obviously have less timber than others. Like my area here, the ag is very small. Like the block I live in is, this isn't necessarily where I hunt, but there's a lot of big woods around these areas right here, big hardwoods, ridges. I would say the crop ground for the timber, it's probably 80% timber to 20% crop, and so that's different strategies compared to others. One thing you said, like, what should we be asking? One thing that people really need to remember with big deer, any deer in general, whitetails are aggressive animals. They like to know, or let everybody know they're around. They leave those signs, rubs, scrapes. There's a reason they do those things. And so those are some of the weaknesses that whitetails have. They have to eat, they have to drink, and they're going to breed. To a mature buck, the desire to breed does is just second to eating and surviving, so keep that in mind, but like calling cards of scrapes and the rubs at certain times of the year, like those are telltale signs, and you can dupe a big buck with those, because like that's just something natural for them. It's kind of like using live bait with fish compared to the rubber worm. Grandpa's bass pond seen 500 rubber worms, but you throw a real live night crawler in there, sometimes they just can't. And that's kind of how whitetails are. The right kind of scent or just the right call at the right time, according to their body language, the time of year can really set a deer off.
It's so interesting to talk to somebody like Ben, and it generates a lot of questions, but there's so many questions that you want to ask that he's going to say, well, it kind of depends. Because if you ask about how big is a core area, and it probably depends on what's going on in that world, or if you ask how far, some of our listeners, how large is a deer's rut core area, and so I don't know that we can answer a lot of these questions that have been asked to us.
Some of the people that are best at this kind of thing, they're making decisions on the fly. He doesn't have a textbook that he goes by. It does depend most of the time.
And it's area specific. Like south, like where you guys are at, those are different type of deer than what, the Midwest deer are, as far as like how they move and where they're eating and where they're bedding, and still somewhat general, but like those deer down there are very cagey, sketchy. They're I don't know how to say it, but I would venture to say that southern deer are probably just a little more harder to kill, if I had to guess. They're
spot on.
in that big.
Yeah, we're right there with you, Ben. We believe it.
Yeah, exactly. They're in them big swamps and big, huge timber blocks, pine groves. They're walking around snakes, and they got all kinds of different things. Where the Midwest deer, they got coyotes, once in a while a bobcat.
Well, when we drive through the Midwest, we always look at the maps and look at and we see these pinch points and these big fields and these woods narrowing down, and we think, man, we could kill every deer up here if we got. But and down here we have these big blocks of woods, and it's just hard to hem them up.
They've got bigger deer, and they've just evolved, and they, with probably a better carrying capacity. The ag, the food. They just start out with bigger deer than we generally have. Although there are places in the South that have it too, but you're right, the habitat. And then the other thing people forget is that for so long we had deer here and shot, the days of deer management came along close and coinciding with the deer herd expanding into the Midwest. So when you started having deer, it wasn't very long before you began to be selective, let them grow up and learned about deer management. We shot them for, 20, 30, 40 years. And everything with barely visible horns. So we kind of bred a nocturnal deer a little more, I think, than in places in the country where deer expanded to later. That's just my little philosophy.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, like they get dog hunted down there.
Yes, right. And it's just we shot for till 30 years old or something. If it's hair, antlers visible above hairline, isn't that what it said, Dudley?
Yeah.
And we're so proud of it, just to kill a deer. Yeah. So I just think, I don't know, it felt like we just bred it into them a little more.
No doubt that public land bucks are way more cagey up here.
Yeah.
Nocturnal more compared to private land bucks that say only get hunted by the family, and if they hunt smart. Everybody always, a lot of people comment, well, if I can hunt where you do, I could kill that deer. Sometimes, yes, maybe that's the case. But a lot of times I don't think it is. It's, you still have to know that deer doesn't just walk around like an idiot, and, like I said, over the years, I've killed a lot of deer. I killed a 180-inch deer, I don't know, what was it, 2013 or 14? That deer was living on public. I killed him 30 yards onto a piece of private. I just found a back door into the farthest part of the public where that deer was living. And I let everybody believe I killed it on a different farm. It was fine.
Well, I mean, you talk about having a great place.
Didn't want to move again.
Yeah, but you talk about having, he does it because he has a great place to hunt and stuff. And sure, I mean, that's what we're all trying to get to, is a better place. But I could still say anybody can screw up a great place if they don't adhere to the discipline that he's telling us all to learn from him on. So, even if you had a great place and you weren't listening to some of the details he's giving us, you'd mess that up too.
Yeah.
What you just said, hunt smart.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes a lot of sense.
Now, like when I go to Kansas and I've only got 5 days or something, I hunt aggressively. You know, I try to time that to where calling works very well out there. You know, I kind of hunt those deer a little bit like predators. I get on the downwind side of thickets, rattle, call. You know, if I see a deer moving, sometimes I'll blind call. If I'm set up to where they can't get downwind of me, you know, just try to take advantage of their aggressiveness 30 times a year. You know, and I'm not exactly looking always for a 200-inch deer. You know, I'm looking for just a big mature deer that's going to make some good footage and teach our viewers something about calling deer and like that.
Speaking of viewers, you can watch his stuff on the Mossy Oak Go app.
absolutely.
Rusty, there's a bunch of content there.
Oh yeah. What, 6, 7, 8 seasons now, Ben? Whitetail
Yeah.
Edge. Yeah, it's
think
plenty
so.
of big deer killing on the Whitetail Edge series on Mogo.
And you can look at the view counts, I know, on YouTube, and you will see why he's killed so many big deer. I mean, there's a lot of people trying to get information from him. It's good stuff.
Yeah, we don't have the
very
largest
informative.
following, but our following is like a cult type following. They're very loyal. They're the type of people that want to learn about deer, because like every show has a different niche, you know, and I don't veer from my lane, you know, and like there's guys that have, you know, just become really good at doing different things and they get popular for it. I'm popular for trying to find a certain deer, hunt him, teach people what deer like to do, how to harvest mature deer. I'm good at going into a property that already has a deer and teaching people how to kill that deer with what's already there.
Wow.
It's really good information too.
Yeah. So this Ranger, what have you shared with the world what he ended up scoring?
He grows 212. I mean, depending on how you measured it, he could go 215, but 212 is what I'm on him.
Oh my goodness.
He's my third 200.
That is crazy.
I hate you have to settle on 212
Yeah, I
like
hate
that.
it.
That's terrible. I feel bad for you.
Goodness gracious. What was it like walking up and putting your hands on an animal like that?
For him, it was really surreal because, like, I did not expect it to happen that early. Like, the cold front, everything came perfect time. I wasn't even planning on going, and I started looking at the weather and deer cast, and I'm like, come home. Basically told my wife, I said, I'll be leaving in 2 days. And I did. And I killed him on the 4th day.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, guys. So why don't we do this? We've kept him a little over an hour. Y'all think if there's any other questions, but in the meantime, Richie, why don't you ask him a trivia question? Ben, we do a trivia question. We've got a new sponsor, and it was kind of dedicated to Sheffield Financial. But we ask you a trivia question. If you get it right, a listener who left a review can potentially win a prize. And what we've learned, Ben, is we typically give them the prize whether you get it right or wrong, so you can take a deep breath and relax.
Okay.
All right, so what we got here? Trivia for today is brought to us by Sheffield Financial, because financing is not trivial.
That's right.
All right, so we're playing for Chad Hurst. Great podcast, love it. I love conservation and love this podcast. Keep them up. So, all right, we got a prize here is a pack of Nosler custom ammo of his choice.
Yeah, no, that's a great prize.
Heck of a
Mhm. How about
prize.
that?
Heck
Yeah,
of
we
a
may
prize.
end up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great prize.
For sure.
All right, so according to Field and Stream magazine, the average peak rut date for most of the whitetail range is blank. We accept any answer within 3 days of the date.
The peak, the date, where you are up there,
3
Ben.
days. Is that for whoa? Is that for the entire country, Richie?
Well, it's the same day.
What do you say, Bob? I don't know.
Yeah, it's up there in that Midwest. The peak rut, the day of peak rut is.
I mean, you got
it's a
3
days.
days on each side.
Come
I mean,
on, you got to give him
Yeah.
more than 3 days.
So he's-
November 8th.
So he's
Ooh,
got.
he
So he's
said
got
November
6
8th, that was
days.
it?
He just popped it
Peak-
right out.
Peak of estrus.
He said November 8th, huh?
Well, that may be what it is. We're being it, but according to Field and Stream, it was November 13th, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say 11th or the 8th, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tell you how I can remember that. That's my birthday. How about that?
Everybody put Bobby's birthday
Mark
on
it
your
down,
calendar.
guys.
But
Mark
it
down.
makes sense he would pick a date a few days earlier than the actual date because he gets his business done sooner than the rest of us.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
does. Well, being it may be the 8th where you are, you may have been in fact right, but that's what Field and Stream said, and when we looked it up, so
I'm sure they've figured something out. Yeah, I did get the Fred Bear question right.
True, yeah, you did.
Which was
instantly.
Yeah. Obviously, you've got a good taxidermist too. Looking behind you, I would encourage guys to watch this on YouTube.
I wish you would have told me about 20 years ago who you're going to pick out of on stock in their company then.
What's your best deer, Ben?
215.
So Ranger's right there at him, isn't he?
Yeah, So this one here is 204.
Wow.
And this is latest. This one's 215.
Wow.
He's a Kansas deer.
Look at all that mess.
Yeah.
Similar, got that flaring kicker off the two there, just like Ranger.
Yeah.
But I was looking
Toxie's going to like this, though. This is just for him. Look at these spurs on this.
There you go. Holy mess.
Wow. That's a limb hanger.
That is a Boone and Crockett. Trust me.
Yeah, I killed that one with a bow. I was about as proud of that turkey as anything.
Wow. No, that's a unicorn there. That you don't see that much.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. Especially up here.
Guys, y'all got any more questions for Ben?
No, I just the observation is that it's just so cool to see someone that has achieved so much that still loves it and is still loving it. It's not like you got to some point and it's not fun anymore. He's loved it and he's learned to have a great life with all that, mix it in with family, close friends and all that, and just loves, he's connected to the woods and the outdoors and has learned to get a great life out of it. I just pray for people to have that kind of joy from it, whether they kill a 200-inch deer or not. Because life's gone in a blink, and the more you can enjoy, that's kind of our sermon is, the whole outdoors and living your life, your best life outdoors. He's a great example of it. I think more people will listen to that because he's so successful too.
Yeah.
But don't miss literally the forest for the trees.
Well, and keep in mind, I mean, he had mentioned himself, he's matured through the years.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's something so young guys just have to realize sometimes you just have to have some, go around the sun a few times.
So you're saying maybe
isn't it truly amazing though? Like if you really think about it, like how God makes us. So like it's same with like young deer, like how they run around like crazy, and then as they start to mature, their core shrinks. Well, it's just like we're the same way.
Yes.
As we mature, we get different. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that comedian Nate Bargatze. He is hilarious and he's very clean. Like he's not a vulgar comedian, but he has this one little skit where he says, you remember when you're like 18 or 20 and your friends call and they're like, do you guys want to go out? And you're like, where are we going? I'll burn this place down just to get out of here. I'll do whatever I can and I'll meet you. He goes, and then you turn 30 and they ask if you want to go somewhere and you're like, well, where are we going? Can I drive myself? He goes, and then you hit 40 and you're like, I'm mad you even asked me to go.
Once you get 60, you don't answer the phone anymore.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, we're kind of the same way. But like God makes us to where we can raise children and have, like, I don't know how my wife dealt with 5 kids. We had 5 kids. I don't know how she dealt with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because she's an angel.
All right.
Because she's an angel.
And so like
100%.
now, it's like, we have a granddaughter that comes over once in a while and we're like, man, how did we ever raise 5? And so just an observation that's kind of how deer, and God just gives us that different way of looking at life and things as we mature. And I just want to say thanks to you guys as Maceo for just support you give me through Whitetail Edge, the platform to be able to, show our stuff. Also, like I tell everybody about Maceo, because like, look, there's a lot of different clothing companies, camo companies, things like that. But I don't think there's one company in the outdoor industry that gets back to conservation like you guys do. And I think that's just above and beyond, and I see it every year at the NWTF. I see it just all the time. And I just really commend you guys for being that way.
I appreciate that a ton. So there's an analogy. As I got older, And, you know, you remember him. We all remember him. That was kind of a turning point for me when we lost Bob Dixon. And I remember thinking, I'm going to start getting better at letting the people I love know I love them and how I feel about them. And so, you know, as we get older and older, we change and our priorities change. And I guess we get more at peace with the things that really matter, and, you know, the things that you wasted time on in a younger day just kind of fade away, you know?
It's like, you know, when you're a Christian and you're dealing with death, like my mom died of cancer at the age of 67, and it was hard, you know, but like we actually had people ask us, like, why are you guys not more sad about this? And it's like, well, because I know where my mom is and who she's with. And like, you know, she's with her Savior. That's what she lived her life to be.
Wow.
And so it's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of having that hope to where you don't have hope. Like people that don't know don't have the hope, and they're always sad. It's, you know, so that's just my, you know, the outdoors can bring a lot of that to light for you, you know, being in Mother Nature and thinking about your creator, and it can help you find those things in life.
Yeah, the world of man and concrete can just put doubt in your mind and Satan play tricks and stuff. But when you're in nature and the wonders that God made, there's no other explanation.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and so it just always strengthens my faith to be out there, quite honestly, too, like that. But to hear you say it, man, inspires all of us.
Absolutely.
Big time. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Ben, you're an impressive man, and we've enjoyed learning more about you today. But through the years, we've enjoyed watching you and keeping up with you, and everybody at Moss Elk appreciates what you do.
Yes.
And we're big fans, and so, but just thank you for coming on and sharing some time with us today.
Yep. Anytime, man.
Yeah, well, we sure appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great.
So
I feel like we barely even scratched the surface.
Yeah,
There's so much more
know.
things we could, you know, learn.
Yeah. We can go into it again.
We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we sure will. And
well, we got some questions from listeners they wanted to ask. I don't think we got to nearly all of them that Bobby had here. But, you know, as this podcast hits in a couple of weeks, you know, send more questions.
Yeah.
And really, we're just fishing for ourselves. We love to do it for the people out there to, you know, gain whatever knowledge they want to hear from people.
Yeah.
We're just about to get into that Midwest November magical time. You know? I mean, what? Maybe there's a part 2 on the horizon.
No, for sure. For sure. So, Rusty, we appreciate you coming down here.
Man, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
You had a blast.
You did well. We appreciate it.
I hope so.
Toxie, thank you for being here. Richie's over here running the board. Guys, we appreciate y'all listening to the podcast. Please watch the television show if you get a chance. It's on Tuesday nights on the Outdoor Channel and a bunch of other times as well. And go check out the huntingedge.com.
Whitetail Edge.
Whitetail Edge. Well, Whitetail Edge. Okay, Richie. whitetail-edge.com. He's on all the social media platforms, YouTube. Check out Ben Rising.
Yeah, and I just got to say, too, along the same lines of what I talked about, Bob, so in case a train hits me or something, you just what a lifetime friend you have been to the brand and the example. I kind of got to that a little bit today because it means a lot to me. So I don't get a chance to tell you that. So for the record, it means the world, the person that you are, and thank you because you're a part of that brand just like we are.
Yep. Well,
Keep doing it.
Yes, sir. Live your life.
Yeah, this has been a good one.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, guys. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.